Okay, so law of sine. Alright, law of sine. Remember we talked about sine, cosine, and tangent, and those only work with right triangles. Well, we're going to apply those so they work with triangles that are not right triangles. But you can't just use them in the same way that we did before, just setting up the proportion. We do it just a little bit different, but the law of sine is pretty easy. First, what we're going to do is we're going to use sine to find the area of a triangle if you know the limits of two sides and the measure of the included angle. So included angle means that that angle is in between those two sides. So if I was looking, if I knew what side C was and side A was, the angle that I would have to know is B because it's included between them. It has to be in the middle. Does this make sense? Okay. One thing I want to point out, notice that in my picture I've labeled the sides ABC and the angles ABC, but the angles are named with capital letters and the sides are named with little letters, lowercase. Okay? So we've got this formula, it's actually the same thing. It's written 3 different times, but it is the same exact formula. The only thing that's different is depending on which angle they give us. So if they give you angle A, you have to know the other two sides, B and C. If you know angle B, you have to know the side AC. If you know angle C, you have to know side AB. So it's the same formula, but just written 3 different ways. So in this case, we're looking at part A. It asks us to find the area of this triangle to the nearest 10. Normally, what's our formula to find the area of a triangle? From geometry? Yeah. Area equals half times base times height. And what do we know about the base and the height? Like, what do they have to do? Like if I'm looking at this triangle A, can I say my base and height are 9 and 8? What do you say no? How come? Why not? Do you remember? What do they have to make together?
Right angle.
They have to make a right angle. And in this case, it's definitely not a right angle because this is 104, right? So in this case, we could not use that formula from geometry because the base and height have to make a right angle. So that one would not work. So that's where this law, or this one of the signs come in. So we're going to say area is equal to 1/2 times, we have the two sides, so we're going to say times 9 times 8, and then sine of the angle, which is 1/4. And then you just have to plug everything in. That's it. I'm coming up with 34.9 centimeters squared. Alright, awesome. So on B over here, they just give us information. They don't actually give us a picture. I would like to draw a picture because I think it's easier to visualize what they're doing. So you just draw a triangle. This is fantastic. Wonderful. Remember that they labeled the angles in capital letters. So I'm going to say A, B, C in capital letters. And I'm going to make little a, side A goes diagonally away from big A. So this is side little a. So this is going to be side little b and little c. Does this make sense of how they set that up?
Yep.
Okay. Alright, so they give us this information. They say angle A is 31 degrees, so this angle is 31. Okay, little b means a side, so this side is 18 meters, and little c means this side is 22. Alright, using our formula for a sine, so we're trying to find the area, can we use this formula?
Yes.
Yes. How do we know that we can use this formula?
Because they have an angle on each side.
Good, we've got an angle on two sides, and what do we know specifically about this angle?
It's not right.
Okay, it's not a right angle. True. What else? What did we say that had to be? Could I make it work if we knew angle C and these two sides? No, because this angle has to be, yeah, between the two, because we said it has to be included, it has to be in the middle of the two sides of the angle. So yeah, we can use this formula to figure out the area. So we're just going to say area equals half times those two sides times the sine of the angle between them, and plug everything in.
We're on 1.97, so we're up to 102.
You got it. Meters. Alright, English for the run. Alright, here's the actual law of sine. The law of sine is basically just a proportion, or just a ratio. Okay? So they split it into 3 pieces. You only have to use 2 of those 3 pieces. Okay? Notice that we have the sine of angle A over the side of A, and then we just, they go together. So the angle B goes with side B, angle C goes with side C. It'll make more sense when we're doing a example like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the law of sines to solve a triangle. And to solve a triangle, that we're a little bit here, needs to find all its sides. Okay? So they're going to give us 3 pieces of information. So we have to find 3 other pieces of information. You may have. Okay? So to solve it is to find either 2 sides of an angle or 2 angles inside or whatever. You're going to find 3 pieces of missing info. Okay? To use the law of sines, you have to know one of the following. Either you're going to have to use an angle side, so the measure of 2 angles and any side, or you're going to have to know side angles, so the measure of 2 sides and an angle that's opposite one of those sides. So it cannot be included. So remember when we used the sine formula to figure out the area, we had to look up the angle between those 2 sides. But in this case, to use the law of sines, it has to be on the outside. It can't be in the middle of those 2 sides. Does this make sense? Alright, so example makes much more sense now here. So it says the following examples, 2 angles and 1 side are given, therefore we can use the law of sines. And in this case, only 1 triangle can be drawn from this piece of information. With the other things that we're going to work with in their later times, you actually can draw 2 different triangles. In this case, we're only working with 1 triangle. So they've given us a picture to look at. We're looking for side A, side B, and angle A. So I would write off to the side. Angle A, little b. Those are the 3 things that we have to look for. They're always going to give you 3 pieces, and we have to look for 3. So the pieces they've given us are 2 angles and a side opposite one of them, which will be. Okay? So the law of sines says I can take a side. In this case, since these 2 are diagonal from each other, I'm going to take a side 3 over its angle, so sine of angle A. Okay, because this is side C over sine of angle C. Does this make sense so far what I'm doing? Okay, and then I'm going to say is equal to, and since I have angle B, I'm going to say sine of 45. And then it's going to be diagonally across from B. So I'm going to put B on the top because this is side B over angle B. So we're just setting up a proportion. That's all we're doing. Alright, so if we're solving proportions, what do we do? Since I have one missing piece.
Flip over one side.
Not flip them over. Cross multiply. So we're going to say 3 times sine of 45 equals times sine of B. How are we going to solve for B? You got it. So then you just plug in your calculator. Now you make sure that you put the sine of B in parentheses.
How do you put sine of 80 into Bible?
I just to get B by itself. So B is by itself because I want to get rid of this guy. So I just divide it over. Does that make sense? Okay. So then I plug in your calculator, sine of 45 times 3 divided by the sine of 80. And yeah, and these are going to give you big long decimals, and we usually will run around to the nearest 10. So 2.2. So that would be right there. All right, now to find angle A, or side A, in order to use the law of sines, I would have to say side A over angle A, but I don't know either of them. I don't know angle A and I don't know side A. But we can figure out what angle A is really easily, because what do we know about all the angles of a triangle? They have to equal 180, yeah. So I can say 180 minus 80 minus 45 has to get you angle A. 55. So now we can use the law of sines with angle A in there to find what side A is. So we don't know what side A is, but we know angle A, we just found it, is 45. And I'm going to set it equal, and I could use either this or this, since we figured out what B is. I would use this because if I use B, then it's already being rounded, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use C over C. So 3 over sine of 80. So this is little side C over angle C. Is this confusing, or does this make sense of what we're doing?
Makes sense.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, so what are we going to do now?
Ooh, that's...
Because I want to figure out what A is, don't I? Yeah, just cross multiply. So A times sine of 80, and then 3 times the sine of 55. So get A by itself, so just divide by sine of 80. That's gone, A is by itself. Plug in the calculator. Right. Yep. This one's easy. And we're done. That's it. Okay, any confusion along the way what we just did? Okay, let's try to beat it. Okay, so they ask us to solve this triangle. Remember, to solve a triangle means to find the 3 missing parts. And they don't give us a picture, so I would draw one. So I would draw a random triangle, label it ABC. Oops, not ABC. In this case, it's NPQ, isn't it? NPQ. And then fill in the pieces that we know. So we know P is 42, Q is 65, and N is 5. So we don't know little q, little p, or angle N. Angle N, little q, little p. That's what we're looking for. Okay, what's the easiest part to find right away? Would it be easiest to find on the sides or to find the angle N? Yeah, why angle N? Right, and then all of a sudden, to 20. So just take 180 minus the 2 that we know. We'll get you angle in. 180. Are you sure?
No, 73. My stomach did 61.
Oops.
My 5 is a whole one now.
Alright, now we can set up to figure out.
Say about for announcements. Freshmen will be eating lunch at 11:10 today due to flower delivery.
Alright, so now we can use a law of sines. Which angle and side pair do we know both of that go together? Does that make sense of what I'm asking? Like, do I know both in and in, Q and Q, or P and P? Which ones do we know? Yeah, we know in and in, because we know angle in and we know side in. So I'm going to go side in, side in over angle in. So we would have 5 over sine of 73. And then do you want to find P or Q? It doesn't matter. Which one first? P? Alright. So am I going to go P over sine of what? What are we going to do? P over sine of 42. This would be P over 50. Alright, and then just like before, cross out the line. What do you end up with? You got it. Okay. Last thing we need to find is sine Q. How are we going to set it up to solve for Q?
Q over the sine of 65, right?
Q over the sine of 65. Yep. This would be little Q over big Q. And then like next thing, yeah, what are we going to set it equal to? Because we already know n over n, we can just use that same one. Bring it out here. So 5 over sine 75. Good. Multiply, just like we know. Good. So we found our 3 pieces. Done. Any questions? Homework.